Hey, Margie here. Are you ready to learn about micronutrients? They're so important for our bones and overall health, and many of us are deficient and don't even know it. We'll go through testing and why this is so important, and we can use the information to make appropriate changes to our diet and supplements. I'm so excited about our special guest. She's a good friend of mine, Mira Dessy. She's also known as the ingredient guru. She's an author, speaker, and holistic nutritionist who teaches at Bowman College. You can learn more about Mira in the show notes. But Mira has spent a lot of time testing people for micronutrients. So this episode is full of so much great information. Stay tuned. Welcome, Mira. I always love being with you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Margie. It's always great to talk with you.
And how funny that we're in such a similar color. This happens so often.
I know. Apparently, we both got the subconscious memo.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into this because this is a very important topic. And what I love is that we can take action on it and it can really make a difference. And it's just something oftentimes isn't talked about, but yet it could be, it's definitely a root cause of bone loss, and your whole entire health can be affected by this. So why don't you just tell us, let's just go from the very beginning. Like, what's the difference we heard of? What is what are we talking about micronutrients? What are we really talking about?
When it comes to micronutrients, there are a number of different things that we're looking at. Primarily, it's vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, plus a few metabolites. And those are the building blocks, if you will, that help run a lot of our body processes and help support our bones, our muscles, our nervous system, how our body functions. And we need these micronutrients. Many of them we actually don't manufacture on our own. So we have to get them from food, and then if our body has a higher need at one point or another, maybe because we were sick or because something else is going on, we need to know what we need to replace or what we need to keep replenished at a certain level in order to have optimal wellness.
And how are micronutrients different than macronutrients? What is the difference?
Great question. So, macronutrients are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And as those are broken down, we get micronutrients. And some of them we can get from food, some of them we make on our own. There are some that are considered essential micronutrients, so we must get those from food. But the macros are the top level things that we eat: fats, proteins, carbs. And the micronutrients are the things below that that we extract from our food.
Okay, so I know the question that everybody's thinking about is that, okay, so in my blood work, I see my calcium level. What is the difference between the actual blood work that everybody gets and every doctor will order? And you can get, values of different vitamins in the blood work. What is the difference between the specific tests that you're going to tell us about and testing for micronutrients versus just the regular blood work that most of us are already getting?
Yeah, that can be a very confusing thing because there's actually two different ways to look at our micronutrients. One is the serum levels. That's what's free floating in our body. That's what's in our blood. The other, which is the way I like to look at them for micronutrients, is intracellular, what's inside the cell. And that shows us the stores that the body has, how much we have in there. And sometimes, if we happen to be looking at certain micronutrients, let's say vitamin D, for example, and we see that we have a certain level for vitamin D in a serum level and the micronutrient intracellular level is different, that could potentially show that we're not absorbing properly or we're not utilizing, it's not going through the cell wall. And so there are certain things that we can do to help our body absorb better so that we have a better intracellular level.
Okay, so since our audience here is very focused on bone health, why is this so crucial for our bones and, also in the prevention and treatment of osteoporosis?
Because we cannot know what our intracellular micronutrient levels are without testing. And, there are certain tests that you can do to look at different aspects of bone health. But when it comes to micronutrients, looking at that intracellular level gives you the exact current levels of what's going on. Now, the test itself looks at approximately the last 6 months. The challenge is it can take up to 18 months to restore micronutrient levels if we have an intracellular deficiency, because the body just moves very, very slowly when it comes to repletion. And the other thing is, I am not a huge fan of just throwing pills at the problem. Like, we need to look at changing our diet. We need to look at making sure we have optimal digestion. We need to look at some of the other things that we're doing to support our body in order to be able to absorb and then be able to utilize those micronutrients.
Mira, you've been doing these tests and you've been working with different physicians and you've been doing this for quite a long time. What have you seen with the people who do have bone loss and osteoporosis? Are there sort patterns that you pick up that people are deficient in?
I will say that that's actually a really challenging question because the micronutrients look at so many different things that it's not just the bone health things that we're looking at. Sometimes we'll see people who are having digestive health issues or people who are having adrenal issues, or, there are other things that can impact the body. And I will share that I think one of the biggest things that I tend to see in a lot of people is the water soluble vitamins are the ones that, if we're under a lot of stress or if there's a lot going on, those tend to be more deficient. And then I also see certain patterns. For example, people who are vegetarian tend to have fairly often some amino acid deficiencies because they're not repleting, and there are certain amino acids that we can only get from animal foods. And so we have to look at supplementing in order to make sure that we're getting enough. Like, that's one instance where I really do believe in supplementation. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, there are certain things that you are just going to have to supplement in order to make sure that you've got enough of those essential amino acids.
And what micronutrients do you think are most important when it comes to bone health? I know everything is, it's sort of like a symphony. We need everything to work together. But what are the key ones if you have to, if you were to say what's absolutely essential?
So I really like to look at, obviously, D and K. I like to also look at their calcium levels, their magnesium levels, their potassium levels. Those are all really important as well because those are all going to help support the bone matrix. And then I also really like looking at the other fat soluble vitamins A and E, because I feel like when we have healthy levels of those fats, those particular vitamins, our body is going to do better. We are not meant to be dried out, and, make sure that we can utilize those well. And unfortunately, with a lot of the fat soluble vitamins, if we see deficiencies there, it's because people aren't getting enough healthy fat in their diet. And so that's a great way for us to be able to make an adjustment.
Hey, Margie here. High quality supplements are a big part of a comprehensive osteoporosis program. To help you, I offer a significant discount every day in my supplement store through FullScript. FullScript has the most extensive catalog of professional grade supplements and wellness products I've ever found. So all you need to do is go to tinyurl.com. That's tinyurl.com/supplements for less. And you'll get to my FullScript store. And in there, you'll see my favorite bone building supplements. So make sure to check it out. And the link will also be in the show notes. So let's get back to the show.
So there are a lot of tests on the market, and there are a lot of very good tests for micronutrients. And I know you've done and you help people with different tests. You want to just share why there's a certain test you like now and why you've chosen that one as your favorite. I know you'll work with anybody's tests, but you want to just explain what you found from analyzing all the tests at the current, right now, what's on the market.
Sure. So the one that I like is by Cell Science. It's called the Cellular Nutrition Assay. And there's a couple of reasons why I like this one in particular. One is that it looks at more of the amino acids. And I think for so many of our different health issues, regardless, I mean, osteoporosis, bone health, definitely, but anything else, if it's energy levels, if it's blood sugar regulation, if it's cardiovascular health or whatever, our amino acids are so important. So I like having that expanded amino acid profile. And then the other thing, this particular test also looks at what they call a redox. It's an antioxidant score, and it tells you what your antioxidant levels are so that we can ward off free radicals and have a healthier balance. This particular test, in addition to telling you what your level is, they actually take your sample and they compare it to a wide range of antioxidant rich substances to see which ones your cells are most responsive to. So, for example, resveratrol is something that's highly antioxidant, but it could be that I could give you all the resveratrol in the world and your body would go, okay, not as sure, and not really do anything. But then pycnogenol, which is another highly antioxidant substance, your body could go, yes, more of that, please. And so for people who have low antioxidant levels, who have a low redox score, we want to make sure that we are adding foods to the diet that are going to help boost that, because that is another factor that can be very important to support your body and your immune system.
What's interesting about that is that, when your system's down, whether your immunity's down for whatever reason, or you're exposed to something, or you have a cold, I always believe in really upping the antioxidants and doing a whole regimen. But this was so helpful to me because before Mira came on, I should say, before I have anybody on, I always have to have the test done to myself, and we'll go into that. So Mira did the test for both, for me and my husband, so I really could see. And both of us had different things that our body reacts to. So, if you want to supplement, what works for your body and what doesn't. I found that just so fascinating. And I've had SpectraCell in the past. So many people have had Vibrant America when I was working one-on-one with people where I sent them, they switched over to Vibrant America. And so now I can see all the differences. But where you can order separately, amino acids, that's way more expensive. This had it included, which I thought was so great. But we'll go into mine later. But I thought this was just interesting to know what your body responds to, and the redox score was something that I wasn't familiar with. So I thought that was a nice perk.
And I think for a lot of people, one of the things that is so helpful with this is because it's based on blood work, looking at the diet, we can see patterns either from your diet or what we need to do to help boost what's going on. For example, some people, I will do this test for them and they say, I eat a lot of these foods that you're already recommending. And in that case, my answer is you're probably not digesting well enough to be able to absorb what's going on. And so we need to look at supporting better digestion to get things out of there. Other people, they go, oh, I never eat these foods. Well, that could be part of the reason why you're deficient. You're not getting that input. And then another thing that happens is sometimes they'll go, oh, well, I only eat two or three foods on that list, and there's a lot of things there. And we really are designed to have a very diverse, nutritionally dense diet, and so you can have a whole bunch of foods that have the same particular micronutrient, but they're going to have different micronutrient patterns and different phytonutrients in them. And so that's why we need a variety. You can't look at something, for example, and go, "Oh, broccoli! I love broccoli. I'm just going to eat broccoli." We also want to eat the other things that are on that list, and so sometimes that encourages us to expand and add more foods so that we can get that nutrient density that our body really needs.
And when you do supplement this, I always love silver linings, like you may do something for your bones. But then what have you seen? Because you've been doing this and working with people with micronutrients just for quite a long time. What have you seen happens?
Oh, it's amazing. Like I had one person that's coming to mind right now who at one point called me, and this was probably 4 weeks, 5 weeks after we had done her test and she'd started changing her diet. And she said, I used to have very thin, papery nails, and they are growing like mad. Is that supposed to happen? I'm like, yes, it is actually, because nails are, extra protein. And if we have good levels of what's going on, we have good hair, we have good nails, hopefully good skin as well. So that's definitely good. I've had a lot of people who find their energy levels improve. I have some people, as we're working together, it turns out that as part of the digestive support, they're also having less digestive issues that, they maybe aren't getting as gassy or as bloated because we're digesting better. The food's not fermenting in there. And I also have had other people who, for example, I had one person, actually, I've had several people with this where they wanted to donate blood and they've always been like subclinical for anemia. And by changing their diet and adding the foods that they needed, they were able to have better levels of iron and because they wanted to be able to also go donate blood, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. It's funny. That happened to me years ago. Years ago, my kids were little and I went to do a local donation and they said, I'm sorry, your iron, you were anemic a little bit, not enough, but enough that I couldn't give blood. And
Right.
so, but that totally changed. I mean, years ago, then it totally changed. This was before I was a health coach. This was before, I was just working as a physical therapist. But then when I upped my protein and did a few things. And, that's never happened now. My values are always so good. But yeah, that's a sign. You are so right. And I love the test don't gas because we want to take action. We want to do all we can do without being overwhelmed. And so there's so many things we can eat and supplement. So it's nice to see, okay, what's really going on? Where can we really, what's going to really make the biggest difference? And that's why I think these tests can be so very valuable, for many people. So I just love this. Let's just talk about the amino acids for a minute because you know, w I mean, because that's what turned up on my test, which was really interesting. So you wanna
Mhm.
just explain about the amino acids for a minute and how important this is?
Well, and what I will share is when we're doing the test, there's 3 different levels that you're going to find when we do this test. You're either sufficient, you're borderline, or you're insufficient. I refer to the insufficiency as a functional deficiency. Your body just does not have enough. And then the borderline is in the middle there. And with the amino acids, we're looking at these as they're such a major part of the building blocks of everything that happens in our body. And so I like that this particular test looks at the amino acids, but also includes some of the others that are not as common, like valine or histidine or isoleucine. And, they all have different functions. We're not going to take a deep dive into what each individual amino acid does, but to know that we're getting that broader profile means that we can get a little bit more support. And if it's okay for me to share, for you, there was a functional deficiency for a particular amino acid called threonine. And that's something that you're normally not going to test at the doctor's office, and you're normally not going to see on just regular blood work, but it's good to have, it's good to know what's going on.
And let me go into that a little more because that affects your collagen, which is critical for your bones. It affects your digestion. It affects the gut lining. So this is important. So for me, I was really thinking about that because everything else, for the most part, my test was really very good. And I eat a really amazing diet and I supplement. I've done micronutrient testing before. So for the most part, I was very good. But these things popped up. And in the past, what popped up was CoQ10. So I added that. I was low in CoQ10. But this time I was trying to think about it. And I think I do very heavy strength training and
Mhm.
I do tremendous exercise and I do have protein, but I probably need more. And I take perfect aminos, but not every day. So what I decided to do, which the perfect aminos has that in it, and I'm such a big fan
Right.
of perfect aminos as a way to get, all your amino acids that are essential. And so and I know Dr. David Minkoff, who I've interviewed, who created this, he says for people with people who care about their bones and osteoporosis, oftentimes, or you're athletic, you need two servings. So I don't even get one every day, most days, but if I'm eating good protein, sometimes I don't. So now I'm at least at one a day. And what I decided to do when I interviewed because I take the pills, but when I interviewed Dr. Minkoff, he said, you know what he does in the morning in his coffee? He puts mocha. So I just bought this perfect amino mocha, and I don't like powders, but this was delicious. It was really good. Put it in the coffee. So I got my extra dose for sure of amino acids. So we'll test again, Mira. What, in 6 months
In
or longer? What,
6 months.
six
6 months,
months?
we'll test again. Yes.
We'll test again and see. But that was really helpful for me. And the other thing that showed up, not as a deficiency, but just more borderline, which I wasn't really shocked because I don't was my calcium, which I don't really eat dairy and I'm really good about it, but not always. So I was okay. I wasn't, but I realized
We're
that
in the borderline for
I
that.
can
Yeah.
I can do better. So what I decided to do is diet-wise make sure. So I'm very big into basil seeds, which have a tremendous amount of calcium. So I'm just going to add a little more in the morning to my smoothie. And then I like the Gerald Steiner mineral water, which also has calcium in it. So, a few tweaks, but it was helpful because I wouldn't have known that. So, the
And I will share that for so many people, especially with borderline deficiencies, as we begin to make these nutritional changes, those are the ones that tend to resolve fairly readily. It's the insufficiencies, the functional deficiencies that take longer. And that's why we want to test in 6 months, make sure things are moving in the right direction, see if we can make any tweaks to what's going on. But I will also share the body is always in flux. So, part of this is one of those tests that I really do encourage people to do at least once a year, once you've gotten to like a baseline level, because different things happen. You get some kind of a stomach bug, or, you have a particular injury or something, and that winds up causing a deficiency because the body needs more resources perhaps than we're taking in.
Yeah, no, it's just really helpful. Again, it's not mandatory. None of this is
Oh,
mandatory, but it's just an extra way to get a little more information that can help you on your program. And compared to so many different things, this isn't outrageously expensive. You want to just
right.
share how much the test is, and also before Mira came on, I said, "All right, Mira, how?" Because a lot of times when people hear podcasts and they're like, oh, great, this sounds good, but who's going to interpret it? How am I going to take this information and put it into my life? So I talked to Mira. I'm like, all right, Mira, before before we discuss this topic, what's possible for people, and how can I know you don't have that much room, but I know you have room to help people. So you want to just explain the whole process if people feel they want to do this.
Sure. The way the testing works is, we would have, I'll give Margie a special code. You can have a 15-minute consultation with me and we'll just talk about what you're trying to do. And then I get some information from you so I can send you a kit.
Wait,
And
that's free, correct? There's no charge
that's
for
free.
the.
The 15-minute consult is
Okay.
free. There's no
Okay.
charge for that. And then if I send you a kit, sending you the kit is free. But then once you fill out the paperwork, you do put in your credit card. And that way I can get it for you at the lowest possible price. When we talk, I send you a little bit of paperwork just so I know a little bit about you. And when your test results come back, it takes like 2 to 3 weeks to get the results back. I write up a report and then you and I have a meeting and we go over everything together. We go over your test results. We go over my nutritional support for you. We go over any supplements that you need. If there's something that comes in from the paperwork, and generally in the paperwork, I just want to know, is there any specific health concern that you have? And if you could do just like a 1 day diet for me so I can see how you're eating. And so if something comes up, I include that in your report. And then we go over it together on Zoom. I show you everything. And then when our meeting is done, I mail you all the paperwork. I don't mail it to you in advance because if the report that I wrote for you needs to change based on our conversation, I want you to have the most current version. But I send you everything. And then you have that information to be able to incorporate into your plan for the work that you're doing with Margie or with any of your other practitioners. But it's really helpful and really useful because you're getting dietary support and holistic nutrition support as well.
So if someone is going to an integrative practitioner, and let's
Mhm.
say they have the Vibrant America, which is a very good test, it's not a
It is.
bad test at all, or even the SpectraCell. So if they have these tests, can they also they wouldn't have to do part one, they could just have the meeting with you? Would that is that possible as well?
So I would still love to meet with them for that initial consultation, which is complimentary, just to make sure whatever their concerns are that I can address it, that we can meet, get to know each other a little bit. And then, yes, as long as your test is less than 6 months old, I can use that to write a micronutrient test if you have one from another practitioner.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so what else would you like to share about micronutrient testing, Mira? Because I do think it's a big topic, and I do think, oftentimes, I mean, there's a lot that we have to look at, and there's so many tests that it can get so overwhelming. But we certainly don't want to miss this because if we're deficient, it's going to just, you want to just share some of the symptoms people may have from deficiency, so people listening may not even realize that they're deficient.
Sure. And, I alluded to one of them a little bit earlier, which of course is that if you have poor quality nails or if your hair breaks a lot or it's not in good, healthy shape, that
Falling
can be
out.
a sign. Yeah, if
Let's
it's
just stop
falling
for a
out.
second. People think I was at the gym the other day and people were saying, ah, that just happens with age. And I didn't know these people, so I wasn't going to butt in the conversation. But they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I have much less hair and I'm going to get the extensions. And I'm thinking to myself, like, do they realize this isn't normal that all of a sudden you're losing massive hair as you get older? Do you want to talk? Yeah.
And right, and because that is a nutritional deficiency, and a lot of times as we improve our micronutrients, our hair, our skin, our nails can get better. Issues with skin are another potential symptom depending on which micronutrients are deficient. Some people get, rashes or patchy skin or that kind of thing. We also gut health issues can be a symptom if we're not digesting well. Sometimes it's because there are certain micronutrients that help the body with digestion. Energy levels, do you get easily fatigued? Are you winded or worn out after working out very easily? Not always, but sometimes it can be because you don't have the nutritional support that your body needs to be able to do that, especially amino acids are really important there. Another symptom that we sometimes can get is if you wind up getting a lot of colds or your immune system is low, that can be a nutritional deficiency as well. So there's a lot of different things that these micronutrients help support in the body. The challenge is we have become so accustomed to them that we think, oh, like you said, it's just aging, or oh, it's normal, or oh, I was sick. I just haven't fully recovered yet. But it could be that you're depleted, and that's why you haven't recovered as quickly as you might otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's the good part because we can age and feel amazing. We don't have to have some of these myths that really exist and people just sort of believe them and everybody feels like this. It's just old age. So yes, so I'm such a believer in that and that there is, so much that we can do. You mentioned something though, but I think it's something that people also can do. You said with the digestion and sometimes and it was, sometimes just adding a digestive enzyme or adding what are your tips to that, Mira, for people before they eat if they feel maybe that's their issue, the digestion piece, do you have any easy tips that everybody listening could do?
I do. For digestion, there's a couple of different things that I think are great starting points for people if they feel like they have a lot of digestive issues. One of them, believe it or not, is add more fiber to your diet. Most of us are not getting enough fiber. And so if we have proper amounts of fiber, it's going to support our microbiome, we have beautiful little bacteria in there that need that insoluble fiber. We can't use it, but they can, and they in turn help support us. It also helps us have better bowel health. So we need fiber for that. Now, I'm also going to say, please don't add a ton of fiber all at once because that'll overwhelm your system. So with vegetables, for example, I like to encourage people to add a half a cup a week of more fibrous vegetables until we get up to a reasonable level. And the other thing, which you just alluded to, is I love digestive enzymes. Our body produces digestive enzymes naturally. However, as we age, we tend to produce less digestive enzymes. And so sometimes it can be really helpful to add one. The good news is they don't accumulate in the body. So you take them before your meals, and it helps you break down the different pieces and parts. The digestive enzyme that most people are familiar with is lactase, which breaks down lactose, milk sugar. So people who, are lactose intolerant know that they can take, there's all bunch of different ones with different names out there, but basically they're taking a digestive enzyme specifically for lactose. But I do encourage people to consider taking a spectrum digestive enzyme because then it's going to help break down proteins and fats and carbohydrates and different substances that are in our food so that we're able to more fully utilize them. And like I said, sometimes when we're feeling bloated or our digestion feels sluggish or whatever, taking a digestive enzyme can be a really good way to help support the system because then we're breaking things down more fully so that our body can utilize it and then eliminate once it's done.
Great. So before we end, and I'll have all the links in the show notes for Mira, for her consultation, for those people who are interested. But is there anything else that I missed asking you that you think is important to share with everybody?
So I'm going to add one other thing that I think is so important for overall wellness and digestion and support as we're making all of these changes, which is to also make sure that we're hydrating properly because our body needs to be well hydrated in order for our system to run properly. And so it doesn't help to just like add the foods. We need to make sure that we have the ability to be able to hydrate, utilize it, and then push out whatever we don't need either through sweat or elimination.
Do you have any tips for that? Mira always has tips for everything, I have to say. Because Mira's the
I,
guru.
yeah,
This is a
thank
different,
you so much.
but
I,
I always get these great tips. Freezing, I mean, putting ice cubes. I still do this, taking the bone broth, putting it in ice cubes, so you just have it. You have all these amazing tips. But what about hydration? What are your favorite ways to do that?
So, my three favorite nutrient dense hydration tips. One is the bone broth. I love having bone broth. That can be great as a little beverage if you need one, or like you said, you can freeze it and then use those ice cubes either because you're going to make a sauce of some kind or you're going to chunk them into a smoothie. You put 2 or 3 bone broth ice cubes in a smoothie, you'll never know it's there as long as you're doing other things that are flavorful. Another thing that I encourage people to do is to look at using herbal teas, like not just iced tea. Iced tea is great. It's delicious. I get it, especially in the summertime, people drink a lot of it. The problem is it can be very dehydrating. So if you use herbal teas, you're getting a lot of flavor and you're getting a little bit of micronutrient from whatever herbs were used to make that tea. So that's fabulous. And then the third thing that I really, really love is making infused waters. And those are just amazing because they're so flavorful. Water's great, but there are times when people are like, "Ugh, I've had enough water. Like, I don't want to drink any more water." So if we can add some flavor to our water instead of those little chemical drops and things that, a lot of people buy at the store, you can throw in like watermelon and a little mint or maybe some green apple or some cucumber and orange, but adding things to your water just helps make it a little more flavorful.
And how long I do that too. I just take the fresh mint that I grow in the summer and throw it in, and it's so good. But do you have any recipes, like how long you leave it for?
I do. I actually have a whole ebook about that. I can send you a link for that.
Oh,
It's on
great.
Amazon.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. Oh, good. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Mira. See, I learn new things every day. All right, wonderful. Yeah, because that makes it so flavorful and easy. These are easy tweaks. That's what I like about the work you do, Mira. It's not, we have to buy a zillion supplements. We have to do this. All right, let's add some infused water and let's do this and let's test in 6 months and see how you feel and see where you are. So
And
all
it's about doing what you need for your body. There is no one size fits all plan. And
I
so I
couldn't
love
agree with you more, and it drives me crazy because sometimes, people will say, "This is what's and I obviously there's a big role for supplements in osteoporosis. In addition, I always believe food first, but of course, there is a role. But some people are like, I want the osteoporosis supplements, and yes, there are some that are good, but everyone's going to be a different calcium dose. Everyone's going to be a different D dose. There's not like one thing. I just, in terms of people really need to know that because especially each person, the food first, then we see what the supplements are, and that's what works. That's what works. It's not this worked for my friend, so I'm going to take exactly what they took because it's so very different.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I can't thank you enough, and I'll have everything in the show notes. And we'll test me again in 6 months. And the consult was good. Mira gave me some really good information. And as I said, I'll never have anybody on the podcast, even though I know Mira very well. We've known each other for a long time. I said to Mira, no, you have to do this for me and my husband. So I see exactly what you're going to be doing, and make sure that, I mean, not that I doubted you for a minute, but I just wanted to really know what this entailed and this test, since it wasn't a test that I was familiar with, but I thought it was great and really got good information. So all good. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to staying in touch and hearing from everybody who does the test, right? Let's hear what you found out and how you could use the information. I think both Mira would know that, but I would love to hear how it all goes. So thanks again. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Mira and now have better understanding of micronutrients. If you're interested in the micronutrient testing, then what you do is you'll have a 15-minute free consult with Mira to see how to go about that. And all you need to do for that is go to tinyurl.com/Mira Discovery. That's for the complimentary call. And if you actually want to consult with Mira, then you go to tinyurl.com/Mira consult. Anyway, those will all be in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.